For nearly 300 years, House Targaryen ruled the Seven Kingdoms with fire and blood. Their dragons made them gods among men, unstoppable, untouchable, and seemingly eternal. Yet within a single generation, the mightiest dynasty Westeros had ever known collapsed completely. Today, I'm breaking down the 8 critical events that led to the fall of House Targaryen, from the height of their power to their near extinction. I've spent months researching Targaryen history, analyzing George R.R. Martin's Fire and Blood, and connecting the dots between House of the Dragon and Game of Thrones to bring you the definitive explanation of how dragons fell from the sky and the dynasty that controlled them crumbled to ash. So let's dive into the blood-soaked history of the Targaryens' downfall, the Dance of the Dragons. The beginning of the end for House Targaryen wasn't a foreign invasion or a plague, it was their own civil war. The Dance of the Dragons, as depicted in House of the Dragon, was the first catastrophic blow to Targaryen power, setting in motion their eventual downfall. When King Viserys Thirst died, his daughter Rhaenyra, his named heir, and his son Aegon II both claimed the Iron Throne. What followed was the most devastating conflict Westeros had seen since the conquest. Brother fought sister, dragon fought dragon, and the realm bled as the Targaryens tore themselves apart. What made the dance so devastating wasn't just the human toll, though that was immense, but the loss of dragons. Before the war, the Targaryens commanded nearly 20 dragons. By its end, most were dead. Vhagar, Meleys, Caraxes, Sunfire, legendary beasts that had made the family invincible, all perished in battle against their own kind. The political consequences were equally severe. The Targaryen family was decimated, with many of its branches wiped out entirely. The survivors were left traumatized, paranoid, and deeply distrustful of one another. The mystique of Targaryen invincibility was shattered forever. Most critically, the dance revealed a fundamental weakness in Targaryen rule, their willingness to use dragons against each other. As Jaehaerys I had once warned, every time a Targaryen is born, the gods flip a coin. The dance showed what happened when too many coins landed on madness at once. This civil war didn't just kill dragons and Targaryens, it killed the absolute power and divine right that had defined their rule. Though they would continue to sit the Iron Throne for another 150 years, the Dance of the Dragons was the beginning of their end. The Last Dragon. In the aftermath of the dance, House Targaryen faced a crippling new reality. Their dragons were dying out. The last dragon in Westeros died during the reign of Aegon III, aptly named the Dragonbane, around 153 AC. This final dragon was a pale, sickly creature, a shadow of the magnificent beasts that had conquered the Seven Kingdoms. Its wings were deformed, it never grew larger than a dog, and it laid eggs that would never hatch. When it died, many believed dragons were gone from the world forever. The extinction of dragons fundamentally transformed House Targaryen from godlike conquerors to mere mortal rulers. Without their living weapons of mass destruction, they became vulnerable in ways they had never been before. Rebellions that would have been suicidal against dragon riders now became possible. What caused this extinction remains debated. Some blamed the Maesters, theorizing a conspiracy to rid the world of magic. Others pointed to the unnatural conditions of the dragon pit, where dragons were kept chained and confined, growing smaller with each generation. Still others believed the Targaryens themselves had lost the knowledge needed to raise healthy dragons. Whatever the cause, the consequences were clear. As Daenerys would later say, without dragons, we're just like everyone else. The Targaryens were now forced to rule through politics rather than fear, a game they were ill-prepared to play after generations of dragon-backed absolutism. The death of the last dragon marked the end of the Targaryen supernatural advantage. From this point forward, they would have to maintain power the same way other houses did, through alliances, marriages, and conventional warfare. It was a game with rules they hadn't needed to learn, and their inexperience would cost them dearly. The Blackfyre Rebellions. With their dragons gone, the Targaryens faced a new threat, pretenders from their own bloodline. The Blackfyre Rebellions, a series of uprisings led by House Blackfyre, a cadet branch of House Targaryen, further weakened the dynasty over several generations. The trouble began when King Aegon V, the Unworthy, legitimized all his bastards on his deathbed. Among them was Daemon Blackfyre, a warrior of exceptional skill who many believed would make a better king than Aegon's legitimate son, Daemon II. When Aegon gave Daemon the ancestral Targaryen sword Blackfyre, many took it as a sign that he intended Daemon to rule. The first Blackfyre Rebellion erupted in 196 AC, splitting the realm between the Red Dragon, Targaryen, and the Black Dragon, Blackfyre. Though Daemon was eventually defeated at the Battle of the Red Grass Field, the conflict left deep scars. Many noble houses had chosen the Black Dragon, revealing how fragile Targaryen support had become without dragons to enforce loyalty. What made the Blackfyre Rebellions so damaging wasn't just the immediate bloodshed, but their persistence. For 5 generations, Blackfyre pretenders continued to challenge Targaryen rule. Each rebellion forced the Targaryens to expend resources, execute supporters of rival claimants, and live in constant fear of the next uprising. These conflicts created a climate of paranoia within House Targaryen. Kings became suspicious of their own family members, leading to harsh measures against perceived threats. This paranoia would eventually become a defining Targaryen trait, culminating in the madness of Aerys II. The Blackfyre Rebellions demonstrated that the Targaryen name alone was no longer enough to ensure loyalty. Without dragons, their claim to the throne could be challenged by anyone with Targaryen blood, and there were many such claimants. The dynasty that had once ruled through supernatural power now found itself fighting to justify its existence. The tragedy at Summerhall. In 259 AC, a catastrophic fire at the Targaryen summer palace of Summerhall killed King Aegon V, his eldest son Duncan, and many others. This disaster, shrouded in mystery, dealt another devastating blow to House Targaryen. What we know is that Aegon V, obsessed with restoring dragons to House Targaryen, had gathered pyromancers and dragon eggs at Summerhall. The exact details remain unclear, but it appears he attempted some form of fire magic to hatch the eggs. Instead, he created an inferno that consumed the palace and many of the Targaryens inside. The tragedy decimated the already dwindling Targaryen line. Aegon V had been a good king, known as Aegon the Unlikely because he was never expected to rule, and his death elevated his second son Jaehaerys II to the throne. Jaehaerys ruled for only 3 years before dying of illness, leaving the crown to his son Aerys II, the man who would become known as the Mad King. What makes Summerhall particularly significant is how it reveals the Targaryens' desperate desire to reclaim their lost power. Nearly a century after the last dragon died, they were still willing to risk everything to bring dragons back. This obsession with their former glory, this inability to accept their new limitations, would continue to drive Targaryen decisions until their downfall. The tragedy also birthed a prince. Rhaegar Targaryen was born at Summerhall on the very night of the fire. This coincidence would shape his character, giving him a melancholy nature and perhaps contributing to his fascination with prophecy. The prince born amidst salt and smoke would later trigger the rebellion that ended Targaryen rule. Summerhall represents the Targaryens' fatal flaw, their inability to move forward. Rather than adapting to rule without dragons, they risked everything trying to reclaim what was lost. This backward-looking perspective would continue to haunt them until the end. The Defiance of Duskondale. In 277 AC, a seemingly minor incident became a turning point in Targaryen history. Lord denies Darklyn of Duskondale, refusing to pay taxes, lured King Aerys II to his castle and took him prisoner. This event, known as the Defiance of Duskondale, lasted 6 months and transformed Aerys from an eccentric king into a truly mad one. Before Duskondale, Aerys showed signs of instability, but was largely contained by his capable hand, Tywin Lannister. After being held prisoner, tortured, and humiliated for half a year, Aerys emerged fundamentally changed. He refused to leave the Red Keep, grew his nails and hair to grotesque lengths, and became pathologically suspicious of everyone around him. What makes the Defiance so pivotal is how it accelerated Aerys' descent into madness. He began seeing traitors everywhere, especially in House Lannister. He grew increasingly cruel, finding pleasure in burning people alive. The relationship between Aerys and Tywin, once friends, deteriorated completely, particularly after Aerys made inappropriate comments about Tywin's wife Joanna. The political consequences were severe. Aerys dismissed Tywin as Hand, replacing him with a series of incompetent yes-men. He alienated many powerful lords with his erratic behavior and cruel punishments. Most dangerously, he began to view his own son and heir, Rhaegar, as a potential usurper plotting to take his throne. The Defiance of Duskondale revealed how vulnerable the Targaryens had become. Without dragons, a minor lord could imprison the king himself. The incident transformed Aerys from merely unstable to dangerously paranoid, setting the stage for the final act of Targaryen rule. As Ser Barristan Selmy later observed, every time Aerys gave a man to the flames, it was the end of him as a human being. Rhaegar and Lyanna. Few actions have had more catastrophic consequences than Prince Rhaegar Targaryen's decision to run away with or abduct Lyanna Stark in 282 AC. This single event triggered Robert's rebellion and ultimately brought down the Targaryen dynasty. The facts remain disputed even within the story. Some claim Rhaegar kidnapped and raped Lyanna. Others believe they fell in love and eloped willingly. What's certain is that Rhaegar, already married to Elia Martell, disappeared with the daughter of a great house who was betrothed to another lord, Robert Baratheon. The immediate consequences were devastating. When Lyanna's brother Brandon went to King's Landing demanding justice, the Mad King arrested him for treason. When their father Rickard came to save his son, Aerys burned him alive while Brandon strangled himself trying to save him. Aerys then demanded the heads of Robert Baratheon and Lyanna's other brother, Eddard Stark. What makes this event so pivotal is how it united multiple grievances against the Targaryens. The Starks sought justice for their murdered lord and heir. Robert Baratheon wanted revenge for his stolen betrothed. Jon Arryn, who had fostered both Robert and Ned, refused to murder his wards. Even the normally loyal House Tully joined the rebellion after Brandon's death broke his betrothal to Catelyn. Rhaegar's actions, whether born of love, lust, or prophecy, revealed a fatal Targaryen flaw: their belief that they stood above the rules governing other houses. In the Age of Dragons, perhaps they did. But in 282 AC, this arrogance proved catastrophic. By treating a political alliance with House Stark as disposable, Rhaegar inadvertently created the coalition that would destroy his family. The relationship between Rhaegar and Lyanna didn't just trigger a rebellion, it produced Jon Snow, whose very existence represented both the dynasty's downfall and its potential rebirth. The prince that was promised came at the cost of his entire house. Robert's Rebellion. Robert's Rebellion, also called the War of the Usurper, was the final blow that toppled House Targaryen from power. This conflict, lasting from 282 to 283 AC, ended nearly 3 centuries of Targaryen rule in a single year of warfare. The rebellion began as a response to Aerys' execution of the Starks and his demand for Robert and Ned's heads. What started as a defensive action quickly became a war for the throne itself, with Robert Baratheon, who had Targaryen blood through his grandmother, emerging as the figurehead of the rebellion. The war reached its climax at the Battle of the Trident, where Robert killed Prince Rhaegar in single combat. With Rhaegar dead, the Targaryen cause collapsed. Lord Tywin Lannister, who had remained neutral until this point, suddenly declared for Robert and marched on King's Landing, which he took through treachery. What makes Robert's rebellion so devastating for House Targaryen wasn't just their military defeat, but the brutality that followed. Jaime Lannister, a member of Aerys' own Kingsguard, assassinated the king. Tywin's men murdered Rhaegar's wife Elia and their children, Rhaenys and Aegon. The Targaryen line was nearly extinguished in a single day of violence. Only 2 Targaryens escaped, Viserys and his newborn sister Daenerys smuggled to Essos by loyal supporters. From ruling 7 kingdoms, House Targaryen was reduced to 2 exiled children with no resources, no army, and no dragons. Robert's rebellion demonstrated how completely the Targaryens had lost the support of their subjects. Without dragons to enforce loyalty, they needed political skill and popular support, neither of which the Mad King possessed. The houses that had knelt to Aegon the Conqueror and his dragons stood and fought against his descendant, revealing how thoroughly the foundation of Targaryen power had eroded. The doom of Valyria echoed. The fall of House Targaryen wasn't just a political event, it was the fulfillment of a pattern established centuries earlier in Valyria. As Daenerys would later observe, the blood of the dragon is fire-made flesh, and fire is power. But fire, uncontrolled, doesn't just consume enemies, it consumes everything. These 8 factors combined to bring down the mightiest dynasty Westeros had ever known. From the Dance of the Dragons to Robert's Rebellion, from the death of the last dragon to the madness of the last Dragon King, the Targaryen downfall was centuries in the making. What makes their fall so fascinating isn't just its scale, but its complexity. No single mistake doomed them. Rather, it was a cascade of errors, each building on the last, each revealing fundamental flaws in the Targaryen approach to power. Their story is a warning about the dangers of exceptionalism, the belief that normal rules don't apply to you. The Targaryens conquered Westeros with fire and blood, but they couldn't maintain their rule through force alone. When their dragons died, they failed to adapt. Instead of building new foundations for their power, popular support, strong alliances, wise governance, they clung desperately to the past, trying to recapture what was lost rather than creating something new. In the end, House Targaryen's greatest enemy wasn't the Baratheons or the Lannisters or even the Starks. It was themselves, their own choices, their own flaws, their own inability to change with the times. As Daenerys would discover centuries later, conquering is one thing. Ruling is another entirely. The legacy of House Targaryen didn't end with Robert's Rebellion, of course. Daenerys Targaryen would eventually hatch 3 dragons and begin her own conquest. Jon Snow would be revealed as Aegon Targaryen, the legitimate son of Rhaegar and Lyanna. The blood of the dragon would once again shape the destiny of Westeros, but that's a story for another time. The fall of House Targaryen remains one of the most epic tragedies in the history of the Seven Kingdoms, a cautionary tale about how even the mightiest dynasty can collapse when it fails to adapt, when it chooses fear over love, when it forgets that even dragons must answer to gods and men. If you enjoyed this breakdown of the Targaryen downfall, hit that like button and subscribe to Explainified for more deep dives into your favorite fantasy worlds. Let me know in the comments which aspect of Targaryen history you find most fascinating, or if there's another Game of Thrones topic you'd like me to explain next. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.